For this video, I'm going to talk about the construction of my ball gown dress. I started out by making my basic bodice sloper that I drafted from scratch. I then traced off to the waistline and drafted princess seams, as they are easy for me to work with rather than putting multiple darts into the bodice. I wasn't sure on the shape of the neckline, so I knew I'd probably have to make some mock-ups to figure out exactly what I wanted. I ended up only having to make 2 mock-ups as the fitting went well, and I easily found the neckline that I wanted. After working with the working pattern, I made the final pattern. You can see that it has seam allowance added to it and is ready to use. The working pattern was just to make adjustments and basically to work with me as I got the fitting correct. Once I made the final pattern, the fun part began. I wanted to recap the fabrics that I'm using for this ball gown dress. I use muslin in the mock-ups, but I'm going to use it again in the dress. I'm also going to interline the muslin with silk organza to give it more structure and more body. I'm using lavender Duchess satin as a fashion fabric for my ball gown dress. This time I'm going to interline it with cotton flannel. Cotton flannel is used widely in wedding dresses and helps give the seams a little more of a round, elegant look. Once again, it'll help me build body and structure for my dress. I'm going to drape the purple silk chiffon over the Duchess satin. Of course, I'm going to line the ball gown dress with the silky charmuse satin once it's all said and done. I like to baste my fabric together by hand stitching. I want to point out that silk organza is not the same as polyester organza. Silk organza is a lot more expensive and it has a lot more body than polyester organza does. I can't stress enough how important it is to press the seams and to clip the curves of the bodice. Since this is a strapless dress, I need to put structure in it, and I'm going to do that with boning. I'm using spiral steel boning and flat steel boning. Spiral steel will help go along the bust curves while the flat steel go along the straight seams of the bodice. I made the boning channels out of muslin and stitched them onto each seam line of the bodice. I had to make sure that they were really straight. Once that was done, I had beautiful boning channels on my muslin/organza interlining. The next part was nearly the same, other than I did not add boning channels to it. Once everything was interlined and basted together, it was time to move on to the next part, putting it all together. Strapless dresses always need a lot of structure, and that's why I added so many layers of fabric and the boning channels to it. These elements need to be included because we don't want the user trying to pull up on the neckline in case it starts to fall down. I decided to use circle skirts for the skirt part of the dress. It's really full and it's going to have a lot of ease over the petticoats. I wanted to show the dress before I moved on to draping the dark purple chiffon over it. I really like how it's turning out, and even though the Duchess satin is a little heavy and it's collapsing the petticoats, I think it is working very well. Silk chiffon is one of my favorite fabrics to work with. It's flowy, it's elegant, and it's sheer. All elements I wanted to incorporate into my ball gown dress. I think a French seam is too bulky for silk chiffon, so instead I used a tiny zigzag stitch along my stitching line. I then trimmed back to the zigzag stitches. The skirt part was just a very long rectangle of silk chiffon, all gathered down into a 31-inch waistline. I first thought that I would pleat the chiffon over the Duchess satin, but after a while I thought the pleats looked a little too uniform and I really liked the gathering look, as it was not as symmetrical and was a little more organic looking in my opinion. I thought the best way to figure out the pattern for the sleeves was just draping. So I took a piece of polyester chiffon I had laying around my sewing room, draped it on the dress form, and figured out how I wanted the sleeve to be. I decided it would be best to use a hand-rolled hem for the sleeves. I didn't want it to look bulky, and what I really like about this stitch is that it's basically invisible. Even though it took a long time, the result was worth it. I basted the sleeves to the bodice to get it exactly how I wanted to be. Once that was done, I deemed the construction process done. The construction process has been my favorite part so far. I'm very happy with the progress, and I think silk chiffon was the perfect material for what I wanted. In my next video, I'll focus on the metallic gold embellishments I'll be designing and the Swarovski crystals I'll be adding to it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the final video for this project.